think about these days, all I think about these days is getting at that goal that's in my heart. I need a reason to believe, yeah, maybe a cure for my disease.
That song is by Blaine Long. My name is Matthew Blades. Meet my friends.
Hi, it's Tim.
And Beth from the Mulhausen Group Real Estate.
We are so proud to sponsor another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It. You can catch us at tmgphoenix.com.
That's a good group of people right there. Hi, it's Matthew Blades, host of Learn from People Who Lived It. And a reminder before we get into today's show that each of these episodes is presented uninterrupted with the support of the Mulhausen Group, with the support of ASI or Advanced Systems Integrations. They design and install cutting-edge audio and visual equipment. So if you're on the IT staff or you're the IT director, please reach out to ASI. This audio visual integrator has offices in Minnesota and in Scottsdale and 2 decades of experience. And the cool thing about them, they pay real close attention to that last 5%, which is the one that drives you and I crazy. We've got a link to ASI in our show description, or you can go there yourself by visiting asi-av.com.
Welcome to another episode of Learn from People Who Lived It.
Well, hi, it's Matthew Blades, and let's jump right back into part 2 with Topher. If you recall, he was telling us the story about his mom and her suicide attempt on his 16th birthday. She went to the hospital. She escaped the hospital, and nobody saw her for 5 years. That's where we're going to pick it right back up.
And we went back the next evening to see how she's doing, and we walk in, and the nurse came up, and they're like, your mom left. She went AWOL, and she woke up, she took all the shit off of her, and she left, and she walked out of the hospital and just totally bailed. And they're like, if you see her or if she goes home, we need you to have her come back. And like, she should not have left. And we didn't see her for 5 years. We don't know where she went.
5 years?
5 years.
I was waiting for like 5 days.
Yeah.
No,
so she disappears.
She never came back. Yeah. She left the hospital, and we don't know where she went. She went presumably maybe to a drug dealer's house or whatever, wherever she went. But so now here, my brother's 17, I'm 16. We're in this apartment, which is like half empty. So picture like an apartment with like lawn furniture, right? And we slept on the floor on a blanket. We didn't even have a mattress, but and so, yeah, she was gone. We don't know where she went or nothing. She just poof off into the wind. We stayed in that apartment for as long as we can, and we eventually got evicted. I had to drop out of school. My brother also dropped out of school, so we weren't going to high school. Once we got evicted, we ended up sleeping on the roof of a middle school for a couple of weeks. And then during the day, we would kind of linger around our school, around Westwood, and go hang out with some close friends, or we'd stay the night at a couple friends. We kind of split up, and you'd couch surf here and there. And we ended up staying, one of my brother's girlfriend's mom, super nice lady. She took us in and let us live with her. So I was living with her, and so was my brother, and she was pretty wealthy. And she's like, look, if you live with me, you're going to have to go back to school. You're going to have to do these things. And we're like, sure. Right. Like, just let us live here because we have nowhere to go. And so we did that. And it was rough. You're exploring, you're young, you're 16, 17. You don't have parents. You're going to go out and smoke pot all day. You're going to go out and drink, and you're going to do all the things that a teenager is going to do that doesn't have any parental guidance, and that is angry at the world. And so I just ended up working. I worked 2 jobs for a while, and me and my brother got our own place, and we had our own apartment, and we had friends, roommates. It was that where, you know, my brother's 18, so he could sign a lease, and and then he turns 19 and I'm 18, and now we have this we have several different apartments. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't anything that was stable, but at least we had our own place. and we were doing good. We were making it. We were surviving, right? And we were thinking, you know, we could, you know, this is okay. Even though looking back on that, it wasn't okay. As like an adult, and I have my own children, right? I look back on that and go, holy shit, like, how did we get through all that? And how did we not end up in jail more than we already did for like underage alcohol consumption and things like that? But what had happened next is something that really, out of all the things in my story so far, all of that sucked and all of it was really shitty. But what had happened to my brother was like the worst, is what really, really kind of like really turned me down the wrong road. And so my brother was in a band. He played bass for this punk band, and our best friend was the singer of the punk band, and we had these big dreams, and they were actually pretty good. But our best friend had died of an accidental drug overdose. And that was really hard for both of us, and really, really hard for my brother. And you know, that led him down to this depressive episode, and this series of depression where he's drinking more. He's now experimenting more with drugs. And so one night, he was at this show, this punk show at Tempe Bowl, was this venue out here, and he was in the mosh pit, and he collapsed. And our friends brought him back to the apartment, and I had just gotten home. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? What's wrong with Tim? And they're like, I don't know. We were at the show. He says he can't breathe very good. I'm like, dude, he does not look good. Like, he couldn't talk. Like, he like couldn't formulate words. And like, let's get him to the hospital. So we take him to the hospital, and you got like 5 or 6 shitty looking kids with bad tattoos, and are just these punk rock looking kids going to this hospital. And we're like, hey, this, like, something's wrong here. And they're like, what drugs is he on? What's he overdosing on? And it was, I remember it just being super judgy. I was like, I don't think he's on any drugs right now. And so we're in this room, and he starts to clear up a little bit. And they're like, all right. And my friends are being rowdy, and we're concerned. And they ended up kicking us out of the hospital. They asked me to leave, my brother to leave. They're like, you guys need to get out. And I remember being escorted out by the security guard at the hospital. And we go back home, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, he gets worse. And I'm like, we got to go to another hospital. So we take him to Mesa General, and we go in there, and they're like, dude, he had a stroke. And we're like, he's 19 years old. We're like, how did he have a fucking stroke? And so now I'm super confused. And I'm like, what does this mean? What's going on? So he's in this hospital for about a week. He's doing better. And they found out he had an infected tooth, which caused him to be septic. And he had a mitral valve prolapse, which contributed to a blood clot that eventually caused a stroke. When he was in this mosh pit, he was septic. He threw a blood clot, and that caused the stroke, right? And so, yeah. And so this is like, holy shit, everything's falling apart, right? We finally got things going. We're not living on the street. We got really good friends in our lives. We've built this like support group with our close friends. We have this family, right? And so when he was getting ready to be discharged, I remember one of our friends was like, hey, dude, I bought you some No Effects tickets. They're playing at Celebrity Theater. We're going. He's like, yes, I'm stoked. He gets up to leave, like to like get all this stuff together, and he collapsed again. And I wasn't there at the time. And somebody called me like, hey, dude, you need to get down here right away. And I get down there, and I go back, and I see him, and he's just in the fetal position. And he's moaning awkwardly, and he's holding his head. And they're like, hey, the helicopter is coming to pick him up, and they're going to take him to St. Joe's. And so they air vac'd him to St. Joe's. And what had happened was he had an aneurysm. burst. And so now he was having a hemorrhagic stroke. And so now he's at Barrows Neurological Institute, and his doctor was Dr. Spetzler, who surprisingly started Barrows, which was amazing. But and so now I'm 18, my brother's 19, he's in the ICU at Barrows, and they're telling me he had a hemorrhagic stroke and that we're not sure if he's going to survive this. And I'm thinking, what the fuck? Like, what, this is like this is my rock. This is my main person. This is my family. And you're telling me he's not going to make it. And they have like catheters coming out, and he's in this room with only one other patient and a bunch of nurses. And he was in ICU for 2 months at Barrows. So now I quit my job. We lost our apartment, and I'm sleeping at the hospital in their waiting room, like every night. And we have friends coming and going. And finally they're like, we can't get this to resolve, so we need to do surgery. So we ended up going into brain surgery. They ended up clipping 3 other aneurysms that they had found. And I remember being his power of attorney, signing all this paperwork. And I'm the only family that can do it, and I'm 18. And I remember seeing him after he got out of surgery. His surgery was about 8 to 12 hours. It went well. But I remember seeing him, and I remember my first impression was he had an incision that went all the way from here to here, and he must have had about 30, 35 staples. And I'm thinking, this is gonna change everything, and everything's gonna fall apart. And at least he survived. And so then he went to rehab. He had to learn how to walk, had to learn how to talk. He lost mobility of his right side. I think he got it up to about 80% capacity. But the one thing that was such a positive thing in his life was music. And he could no longer do that. He could no longer play the bass. He could no longer be in this punk band. And so that was a long road that led to severe depression, more substance abuse. And then when he was 21, he ended up taking his own life. And that was really hard. That whole experience of losing the one family member I have. And that's when it took me down a really dark road where I became severely depressed and didn't care about anything, just wanted to drink my entire life away, and just, what's the point? And I did that for several years, and it was rough. It was the darkest period of my life, certainly, and it was hard to recover, because not only did we lose our best friend, but now I just lost my other best friend and my brother. And he had so many friends. Everybody loved him. Everybody loved his personality, when he's, all the music friends he had, and everybody absolutely loved him. And his memorial was amazing. Everybody showed up, and everybody contributed, and we were able to take care of his services. And he's actually where our best friend was cremated, and his memorial is my brother's right next to him. So that was really nice to be able to do that. But after that, it was just downhill for me.
Isn't it amazing to you, almost looking back, that's the first time you spiraled?
I don't know. Yeah. That's the first major time I spiraled. I look back, and certainly there was periods of depression in my life. Certainly as a kid, there was severe anxiety. Certainly there was, I'm sure I probably had panic attacks as a kid, and constantly worried and anxious and depressed, totally. And this is when, as a young adult, losing our best friend, and then losing my brother, and our mom just bailing out, which she did come back during all this. And when my brother, when he was recovering, I wanted to put this in there. When my brother was recovering and going through physical therapy and stuff, our mom showed up during all this out of nowhere. One of my brother's girlfriends, their parents hired a private investigator and found her.
Whoa.
And because they're like, hey, dude,
because she would want to know that her son died and all the things, right?
But before, so this is right when he was out of recovery, before he committed suicide, she was back in our life. I was so angry at her, and she's living in this trailer park, and my brother was so forgiving. He was like, I want her back in my life. I love her. I can forgive her. And I just couldn't do it. I was so upset at her and so angry and so guarded. And so I know he was going and visiting her a few times, but I didn't want to. And I did a couple times, but I didn't want to do that because it hurt too much. And so when I got the call that my brother had killed himself, he did it right behind her house. And I had to go tell her this. And I had to go tell this woman that her oldest son is just committed suicide. And I had to do it gently because that's not what I wanted to say. What I wanted to say was, where the fuck have you been? And why weren't you here? Because, what you want to do is say, this is your fault, but it wasn't. He made that choice. And she didn't make that choice for him. He made that choice. And so that was really hard, telling her that. And then I just kept the relationship very distant. I would check in with her every so often. She would move around a bunch. She would live from one trailer to the next. She would have one job to the next. And so that was definitely very complicated for me. While I'm going through this pain of losing my brother, I don't want to have her in my life. I don't want to share that with her because I don't feel like she deserves that.
Deserves it, for sure.
But I'm sure she was going through pain herself.
Of course.
And I can reflect on that, certainly. And I'm listen, no mother should lose their kid, right? Even the really bad mothers, you're still their mother. And they were working towards repairing that relationship. And it was very, to me, I was caught off guard. I know he was depressed. I went over to his apartment and he had cleaned up his room and he left me a suicide note in his journal that I found a few days later. And he apologized for everything. And that was tough. And so going down that road was really difficult for me. It lasted several years of just not caring, drinking, trying to drink the pain away. I ended up joining a band and I learned how to play the bass. And I felt like that was great because I was like, wow, look, I'm going to honor my brother here. I'm going to learn how to play this bass and be in this band. And the band ended up taking off. We toured a whole bunch. We got signed. It was such a great experience. Like, wow, this is what my brother always wanted. He always wanted to be in a band that made it and that could tour. And here I am touring with this band, putting out records, doing all these great things, trying to find that happiness in life. I met my wife and she has just been a huge support for me. And she really, really turned me around and was like, look, you get to make all these choices in your life. Just because you grew up in that environment and you had all this really shitty things happen to you back there doesn't mean they have to happen up there.
Yeah. And
I'm like, dude, totally. And so she really did. She turned me around. I quit drinking. We got married. I still toured a little bit. I was guitar teching for a couple bands at the time. And I remember calling her. I was in South America and I was like, dude, this sucks. Like, I'm on the road a lot. I'm not making very much money. Like, what do I do? And she's like, dude, go back to school. I didn't even finish high school. So I was like, well, how can I go back to school? I didn't finish high school. So we'll just figure it out. You got to start somewhere. And so I get back.
We'll just figure it out.
Just figure it out. Go. The first thing, you know what she said? The first thing you got to do is just show up. Go to MCC and ask, what do you got to do? If you got to do your GED, then do your GED and get into college. And I said, you're absolutely right, because what she showed me is that for most of my life, I kept putting up my own roadblocks. I kept telling myself, I can't do that. And I would rationalize it. Like, I can't do that because I didn't go to I dropped out of high school, or I can't go do that because I have tattoos, right? So I come up with all these reasons why I can't do something. And she tells me, the only person telling you can't do anything is you. You're the only one telling you can't do something. So you got to remove that. Nobody's telling you can't go to school. Nobody's telling you can't go do whatever it is you want to do in life. And so that was like an eye opener to me, thinking, holy shit, you're absolutely right. I am doing that because I thought that's just how it was. And so I go to school. I ended up going to ASU, and I ended up doing my undergrad in human nutrition. And then I decided, I was working in a clinical lab at the time, with a bunch of pre-med and pre-dental students. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm 30 something years old. I have a kid, and what do I do? And a friend of mine was like, have you ever heard of a PA? And I was like, I've never heard of a PA. What is that? And I looked it up, and I was like, holy shit, this sounds amazing. And so I started working towards that, right? So I was like, how do I make myself be a really good candidate to get into a PA school? So I started volunteering. I started a student organization at ASU, which is still going to this day, which is amazing. And I started interviewing at these schools, and I ended up getting into AT Still here in Mesa. And, I'm bartending at night. I'm going to AT Still during the day. Me and my wife have a couple kids. She's working full-time as a teacher, and she's getting her master's and things like that. And we're just doing life, right? And I'm healing during this time. I've accepted my life. I've accepted the bad things that had occurred to me growing up was not my fault. It wasn't because of me, because when you're a kid growing up like that, you automatically feel it's something you did wrong. What did I do to make my mom not love me? What did I do to make my mom like this? Why is it that why do I feel that way? And I finally accepted that growing up. And so I graduated PA school, and I gravitated towards psychiatry. And I felt, I did all these rotations. I knew what I didn't want to do. And I ended up working full-time at an inpatient hospital with Dr. Vines, who's a good friend of mine. He's their medical director. And I thought, dude, this is where I need to be. And how better can I honor my brother? How better can I help people than work in this field? Because I get it. I understand what it feels like. And I know what people, I can understand what people go through, and I can empathize deeply with how they're feeling. And so I feel like that's helped me be a good listener. It's helped me understand how to help other people. And so that's what led me to where I am now. And I feel like that journey has been incredible, but at the same time, I look back and I think, wow, everything was so fucked up growing up, and everything was just so chaotic.
Right.
And here I am now. I opened up my own psychiatry clinic. We've got 5 providers, and I think our patient population's up to about 5,000 people. And Whoa. So we've been able to help those people. And to me, my target population is that 18 to 35 year old, because I can relate. And I feel like that age period is so vulnerable, and they don't know how to get those resources. They don't know how to find help. And so that's where I want to be, like that beacon. And I want to be like, dude, we're here and you can come get help with us. And so yeah, we did that. So while I'm opening my practice, my mom is trying to make contact, and I'm thinking, okay, it's time for forgiveness, and I'm going to open up, and I'm going to accept her for all of her, for her whole life of that turbulence and that chaos. I've accepted that that's what happened, but that's not where I am. I don't need that to happen for me. I can pave my own road, and I can choose to walk down it. And so she's now kind of entering back into my life. I'm having phone calls with her, and I'm helping her get help. And like, you need to talk to your psychiatrist, things like that. You need to get on the right meds. And so there's some stability. And then things get bad again with her. And she was living in Nebraska. And that felt good for me because she's in another state, and I can have that distance that made me feel comfortable. But then all of a sudden she up and moved back impulsively. And she's like, hey, I'm at a bus station here in Mesa. I'm back. And I'm like, why? You had all of your healthcare providers in Nebraska. You had therapists, you had a psychologist, you had a psychiatrist, you were on the right meds. Why did you move back here? And it went to shit for her. And she ended up getting back with an old friend, and her friend, her good friend son is my best friend. And we grew up, like, we've known each other since we were 8 years old. And
so this guy's been through your entire dance.
Yeah. He knows it all. My mom and his mom is the same as mine. And that mental health, always doing drugs, whole 9 yards together, right? They were like, you know, not Bonnie and Clyde, but like Thelma and Louise, but on a ton of drugs and have severe bipolar. And so he's like, dude, what are we going to do? My mom is now hanging out with your mom again, and they're living in a motel in Mesa, and they keep asking us for money. And I'm like, fuck, dude, this is rough because she needs to figure this out. And so now I'm exploring ways. I was just going to buy her own trailer and be like, look, here's a home, live here, get help, and you need this. But I was too late. So last year, she killed herself. I get a call from my best friend, and his mom came home to their motel, and she had overdosed and killed herself. And I felt so defeated and angry again that I'm like, I finally accepted you, and I was slowly working towards having you somewhat back in my life, but I'm guarded because now I have 3 kids and I'm super stable, and I love the life that me and my wife built. And I'm going to be protective of that. And so I was slowly getting there. And then you killed yourself. And I was upset, and I was angry and hurt. And so I go over to that motel, and she wrote me a suicide note, and it wasn't a nice one. And it wasn't a I'm sorry, I love you. It was I'm mad at you, and why didn't you help me? Wow. And that hurt. And so I paid for all of her services, and she's next to my brother at the same cemetery. And I feel sorry that she didn't have a better life. I feel sorry that she went through all of those things since she was a child, and it never stopped. It never ended with her until she took her own life.
Yeah, it is. It's just this whole series of tragedies, one stacked on top of each other. And you must look at it that way, right? Now, knowing the things you know, the training you've been given, the things you've had time to reflect on, it's like, golly, man, just one thing after another. I found myself, while you were telling your story, Topher, feeling like without you, I don't think your mom makes it nearly as long as she does. Do you feel like you might have been a little bit of the reason she stayed alive longer?
I think so. And I've had that conversation. And I think, was she holding out to hopefully have a relationship with me? And, she has to process the loss of her oldest son.
Sure.
And I don't know if she did. I don't know what, I didn't open up that relationship with her because I already healed and I already went through the process of grieving. And it took a long time for me with my brother. And I didn't want to open that back up for her. And I didn't want to give that to her because she wasn't there. She wasn't. She made those choices. And then at the same time, there's a conflict because she made those choices because she was untreated. She had a severe mental health disorder that was not treated. And so that's the conflict. The acceptance of who she is and the acceptance of all those choices she made, I've accepted all that. And I've healed from all that. I'm able to find the people that I can talk to and share it with. I didn't bottle it up. Certainly I did for a little while, Matthew, certainly. But then you get to the point where, wow, you find those people in your life that you're able to say, look, this is how I'm feeling. This is what I went through. And the weight that comes off with that and the mask can come off and you can really feel so much better. And again, that's why I seriously appreciate your podcast because you are giving people a resource and a channel to do that. And you're letting people know that it's okay to talk about these things.
Not only okay, I think we need to do more of it, right? And just to understand it because there's so many lessons to be learned, right? We call it learn from people who lived. There's so many lessons that come across in today's podcast. Number one, I'm a big kid advocate, right? And so one of the things that screams at me from this podcast edition is a kid who's really acting out in school or really going and having some tough behavioral times. Digging, like the first thing you should be thinking about is what's going on in their life, right? Not he's a bad kid, he's eating too much sugar, he's ADHD, not all the other avenues that we drive down. I feel like the first thing we should be looking at is what's going on in his life, in his home. Yeah. And then there's just a whole host of other lessons that have come through this whole thing. Can I ask you something that I asked another person that we've talked to who dealt with suicide in this capacity? How do you feel about suicide, Topher?
Yeah, I mean, if you had asked me, how do I feel about suicide 10, 15 years ago, I would be pretty angry about it. Like, it's not, growing up, I always had this inner sense of that's not the way. There's always going to be a better way. That is, you don't have to do that. That's how I've always felt because as a kid, I've seen my mom try to attempt suicide and I've intervened. And those emotions to that of you shouldn't have to do this. So I understand why somebody has those thoughts. I understand when you feel like the emotions are so heavy and you feel like the hopelessness and you can't see that light. I understand why you would feel that way. And I understand why you have those thoughts, but you don't have to, because there are people out there that will listen and there are people out there that will help you. But I understand why you would feel that way. And that's what I've learned a lot in the last 10 to 15 years is understanding what people go through and their thought process on how they can cope with it. Because if somebody was in a period of depression and they had people like Dr. Frank. They had people like support systems. They had a therapist. They had a good psychiatrist on board that helped them navigate, whether that's, finding alternative ways to help or the right medications and things like that. Then suicide wouldn't be on the table as a coping skill, or wouldn't be on the table as an outlet. There would be other things. That's what I hope to do, because I've lived through it and I know what that pain feels like. I know what it's like to be left, behind from someone that decided to make that choice.
So let me ask you a question that we can kind of all discuss, and maybe we start to wind down a little bit, because I really like to talk about, how do you stay in a good mindset, and so these things that you experienced along your life are going to manifest themselves in ways, right? They're going to show themselves in your everyday life, even now that you're in a very different state of mind. There's no way around it. I don't know how that level of abuse, abandonment, all the things that you had to deal with growing up couldn't possibly show themselves in some ways. So, how are you as a healthy guy here working through it? Like, would you mind sharing a tool or two that you use to help yourself?
Yeah, no, definitely. And understanding all those things and living through all those things and all those emotions and all those experiences. Again, I had a big period of depressive symptoms. I had a big period of depressive episodes that lasted a really long time. And my coping skill, my go-to was alcohol. And I always stayed away from drugs. I was always against any type of drug. It was more the alcohol. Go out and party with your friends. You're in this band. That's what you do. But then it gets to a point where that alcohol, you understand that I'm using this because I'm not allowing myself to heal. I'm using this as I'm self-treating, right? And so it came to a point where that was affecting the lives around me. And I had to make a choice. And so that choice was, that can't be part of my life anymore. And so, and that's not an easy choice. I understand that. I know that's difficult, and it was difficult. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but I decided done drinking. And I wasn't a severe alcoholic. I wasn't drinking daily to excess. I was functional, and it was, 4 or 5 days a week. You have 4 or 5 beers on the weekends, you tear it up with your friends, that type of thing. But that's still not okay. And it was preventing me from actually healing and actually going through the emotions to get out better on the other side, right? So some of the things that I learned after removing those negative coping skills, those negative self-treatments, after removing that, it was about identifying those things that are major to me. And those things were the relationship with my mom, the loss of my brother, the loss of my best friend. What am I going to do in my life? Things like that. So I recognize those things, but at the same time, look at all the good things. Look at the awesome relationship I have with my wife, our beautiful kids. I have goals and working towards those and staying determined that I can do better. So that's a lot of self-reflection, a lot of positive self-thoughts and things like that. But most importantly is having someone to talk to, having my wife there to talk to, having my best friends there that I can talk to. That is what helped me so much, because I didn't feel alone, because I always felt alone growing up as a kid, finding my mom who attempted suicide and all those things. I felt so I didn't have that support. So building that support group around you of people that are positive in your life, people that build you up, and people that care and that can listen, that's what really helped me. And I know that's not simple, and I know that's not easy for a lot of people to do. It's one thing that helped me is say, okay, look, these people in my life are not healthy. And I have goals, and they just don't align with those goals anymore. And finding those people to incorporate and bring into my circle, it's been such a huge help. And but most importantly, having somebody to talk to, and somebody that I can tell them how I feel, but just have them listen and have them hear what I'm saying. That's been a huge help for me. You know, everybody has different ways and different modalities that work for them. And Dr. Frank, I'm sure you can attest that, you know, not every treatment plan works for everyone. And
if it were that easy, I mean,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. So everybody's totally different. It's getting to know, right, getting to know your patient and listening to their story and understanding them and where they want to be, and then coming up with that treatment plan that works for them. You know, that's, but inevitably, those are some of the things that's helped me.
Listening to kind of one of the last pieces that you just said about building that support system, unfortunately, it goes back to what we discussed a few minutes ago. That idea that, like, at a basic level, in order to get started, the required foundation is that you have to believe that you deserve those things, that you met your wife and you identified that she was a great person for you. If you did not believe that you deserved this great person in your life, you would have figured out a way to screw it up or push her away or whatever. I am happy for you that you did not do that. But that starts with understanding that not just that you wanted better, you wanted the stability, you wanted all those things, but that you deserved it. How did you keep believing that entire time, the first couple decades of your life? How did you keep believing that you deserved better? Or did you question, and maybe she was one of the ones who came around and convinced you that you did?
I think a bit of both. And, you know, growing up like that, it wasn't, I didn't feel deserving of anything. I felt like, you know, as a confused and angry child and adolescent and young adult, I felt things were not fair. That's how I felt. I felt like life isn't fair. And that's not fair that, you know, I didn't get to go to college and live in a dorm room and experience that. It's not fair that I don't get to go on family vacations. And it's not fair that I didn't grow up having, you know, Thanksgiving and Christmas was hit or miss. And, you know, that's how I felt. And upset and angry about it. And that emotion was directed at my mother, because she was, to me, she was the cause. But in reality, I firmly believe, had my mother gotten the help, had she had the resources, and had the right treatment, maybe things could have been different. Yeah. Now, I don't ruminate, and I can't look back and go, what if? Right. That is so easy to do. And we all get caught in doing that. And we constantly look back, and we look back at all those choices and all those experiences that we've had in our life. And we carry them in like this, like pretend backpack, right? All these things in this backpack gets heavier and heavier. And we're constantly looking back into this backpack to pull these things out, right? And to look at them and stare at them. And then we take our eyes off the road in front of us, and we let those things just steer us around, instead of going, okay, look, I get to decide how heavy this is going to be. Certainly these experiences made me who I am, and I cannot change those. So I have to accept them, and they're there, but they don't get to drive me forward anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
I get to pave my own road. Right.
Well, I mean, it is the driving nut, and I've used it before, and you've probably heard it too, right? When you are driving, there's a reason why your windshield, which shows you where you're going, is so much larger than the rear view mirror, which should only be a tiny informing aspect, right? It's important to know what's back there, but it's not nearly as important as what's in front of you.
Right. And that's hard sometimes.
Yeah, easier.
I was going to say
easier for us to sit here and talk about it, right?
Next to impossible, right? Because you've been the kid, right? You've been the kid in the darkest of the dark and lived in a dumpy apartment. It didn't have access to much, and if somebody was like, "Hey, kid, you're gonna be okay one day," you'd be like, "Fuck you, really."
Yeah,
fuck you, man. You have no clue what I've been rolling with, Yeah. But look at you. Look at you. You're here. And that guy might have been right, huh?
Yeah, maybe. I've always felt too, like this inner sense of it has to be better than this.
Yeah.
I felt that way. Like there has to be more. There has to be something else, because I've already had that. This sucks. Right. And this life sucks. And I've always had that deep inside of I can do better. I can be better. And I don't want to be like that. And so that's been a real big driver for me. And it took the right people in my life to help me see that I can reach any potential I want to. And I can do whatever I want to do in my life, and I get to make those choices because I'm in control now.
Yeah.
I wasn't in control as a kid, but now I am. And now I see that. And now I've removed those roadblocks I put up in my life. Right. And so I make those choices now. And it led me to where I am now, talking to you guys, sitting in my office of a young adult psychiatry clinic, helping those people. And a lot of that driving force with me, with helping a specific age population of 18 to 35, is I do wish I would have identified my brother as being that depressed. And I felt like I missed it. And that's okay. And I've accepted that. And it's not my fault he made that choice. And I think that's really important for people that have survived. Family members and friends that have committed suicide, is it's not your fault. They made that choice, and we can't ruminate too hard on what you could have done better. But I want to be a person that says, I'm going to do whatever I can right now. And so that's where we opened up Olivia, and it's been going great. And I feel like I'm helping people, and I feel like I'm giving back. And it feels good.
Yeah, okay. I want to ask you dad to dad. I want to ask you a dad to dad question. I have a little bit of a philosophy that I buy into called parent with a sense of urgency. Obviously, losing my dad at 23 years old. When I got my own kids, I got my hooks into them pretty good, right? And I kind of I jumped all over that dad shit, man. I loved it. Really, really, really loved it. And I would say, like, for the first 10 years of their life, we were really in it, and just all the things that you're supposed to do. And I tried so hard to make sure that I didn't repeat the cycles that I experienced in my own childhood. How are you as a dad consciously making the efforts not to repeat generational abuse cycles when you get pissed off, or to go down, or to help your kids out with mental wellness and make sure that they talk and they verbalize what's going on? Like, what are you doing to help your own family in that space?
Yeah, no, that's an amazing question, because, a lot of families go through things. A lot of kids experience anxiety and depression and things like that. And with my family, the thing that's really important to me and my wife is communicating with our kids and letting them know that we are always here. Even if it's really, really bad, we're here. And if it's really good, we're here. And that we're not going to judge you, and we want to listen. But growing up or when we first had kids, it was hard. Like, I don't know how to be a parent. She grew up with a mom and dad that were married for 45 years and this big, giant, amazing family. I tell you what, the first time I went to her Christmas at her mom's house, and she has 4 or 5 aunts and 4 or 5 uncles, and it's this huge family. Man, tell you what, that was really, I felt really out of place there. And so getting used to that, you know, like, wow, she's got this big family and she talks to her aunts and she has cousins and all these things was so foreign to me. So being a dad was, is still a learning process, man. Like, I don't want to be that authoritative person. I don't want to be that, you can't do that because I said so. That's why, you know, and there's no capital, you know, punishment or anything like that. We don't believe in anything like that. But, you know, that authoritative, like, dad voice and that you're in trouble, like I had to move away from that. And cause that's where my mind went. And in her case, she's like, no, you know, there's different parenting styles. So therapy, we have a family therapist that teaches us how to be great parents and how to identify, you know, what our kids are going through. Because, you know, my son is 6, he's amazing. I have a 10-year-old, she's equally as amazing. And my 12-year-old is awesome. But we all go through stuff. And we all have a therapist that we see individually, except for my son, he's great. And so we all have our individual therapists that we see that teaches us to be a good family unit and to talk and to share our emotions and to be like, hey, I'm here for you, and how to repair those friendships when things are bad and stuff like that. That has been a huge help. If I didn't have that and I didn't have my wife, I'm sure I would be like that asshole dad that's like loud and obnoxious and like, you can't do that, that's wrong. Like, instead of like, hey man, let's talk about why you shouldn't do that and let's see how we can teach you to make a better choice. Because I'm not going to be here all the time to help you make that choice, right? So that's what I've been learning, and it's been amazing. Like, not easy, it's been amazing, and I love my family, I love my kids, I love my wife. It's great. But yeah, I mean, you could probably relate to, Matthew, like, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, look, like, each kid is different, right? Each kid's, the way you parent each kid is slightly different based off of their needs, their personality and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm actively learning right now with our therapist and everything, which is great.
Yeah, no, it is. It's a huge learning curve on almost every level. And, you know, and especially if you're somebody who had a little bit of a volatile childhood, there can be, your kids can trigger nearly every single emotion you can possibly imagine you have.
Totally.
They have access to the motherboard where I'm right. I'm not joking.
You guys are simultaneously making me so excited to be a dad someday and also terrified to be a dad someday. So thank you for both of that. That's great.
No problem. Yeah. No problem.
Yeah, it's exciting, and you're absolutely right. They know what they're doing, don't they?
Oh, yeah. They're in it. Well, yeah. Topher, I just can't even thank you enough for sharing just I mean, any part of that is enough, right? But you've overcome so much, and seemingly, and you know, the downside is that it's a podcast and you can't see that, you know, the moments where he's talking about his brother, he's got a smile on his face. The moments where he's talking about his mom and he's got a smile on his face. You know, those parts you can't see too much. Hopefully you could hear it a little bit, but you truly feel like you're a different person, don't you?
Yeah, I do. I feel healthy. And I feel like I have a lot of drive and motivation, and I feel like I have a lot of hope that I can give to other people. Again, because I know what it feels like, and I just hope that I could be someone that people can come to, and allow me to help them the best that I can. You know.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. And we'll be in touch sooner than later. And there's so much coming up between the two of us, man. I'm just elated to see where this goes.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me on. And thank you, Dr. Frank. And it's been a pleasure. And I love what you guys are doing. You're going to help so many people. And I feel like you're breaking down barriers. And that's absolutely epic, and I love it. So any way I can support you and what you're doing, I'm here. I'm always here.
She bit my heart, she didn't break it. Well, she took a big bite, said it tastes like bacon. Lips like Presley, moves like Elvis. You forget about your heart when she shakes her pelvis. Hey. Oh, we got nights to dream and wings to fly. Still young, but not tonight. I wouldn't have it any other way. We got gravy boats and mortgage payments. It's been so long since I've seen the rain. That's where I'll be when I die. That's where I'll be when I die. We've got nights to dream and wings to fly. We're still young, but not tonight. I wouldn't have it any other way.
We have 3 goals with Learn from People Who Lived It. 1. To help you feel less alone. 2. Encourage you to seek out a coach, a therapist, a church, anyone who can help you get through your journey and find some healing. 3. When you're ready, share your story with us.